Want to make those round the world 360-degree photos with your GH5? Keep watching. A GH5, awesome. A Plunge Bob from Home Depot, some nylon string, cheap spherical manual lens thingy. All right, so the basic idea is I'm gonna use the same thing that surveyors use to sort of center my gravity. I need to spin around the nodal point of a lens, and usually the nodal point of a lens is somewhere marked. So this red line here on this lens is probably the nodal point. So I need my camera to spin around this. I don't want to take my camera here and hold it and move it like this. I need to spin it around here. So in order to do that, I want to do some gravitational pull right here. I want to know that this is the center and I want to feel it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this nylon string and this Plunge Bob, and I'm gonna make a little dangling Plunge Bob that's about my height. And I'm gonna have a little loop on it, and I'm gonna loop it onto this lens. One little tip on the Plunge Bobs too, if you're gonna travel with them, is you can screw this bottom part off. It's not really gonna affect what you're doing, and it's a little bit safer. So the way these work is you unscrew this top thing, we're gonna run some string through it, tie a knot. I'm just gonna kind of open it up, stand up here. I'm gonna go a little bit longer than about chest height, right to about here. A little bit longer because I'm gonna need to tie some loops and stuff like that. And it's always easier to cut down than to be too short. I'm gonna cut a piece here. Hey, this part sucks. All right. Woo! I got the string through the little hole. So I just tied a couple knots like this. And so you can see we're good. This string is gonna hold. So I can screw this thing on. And you have your basic Plunge Bob system on this end, again with the tip removed, nice and heavy. So you want it to be about full. You're gonna hold the camera right about here. So you want it to be something like this, right? I'm gonna do like a little loop thing here. You wanna do a slip knot, just like when they hang people kinda. There we go. I'm gonna say that the nodal point is somewhere, you know, close to it, like that. So this is the basic concept right here. I can hold the camera out like this with this Plunge Bob. You can put something down on the ground, like a penny or something like that, and you can line up over it with the Plunge Bob, kind of wait for it to settle, and then take your photos. Is it gonna be perfect? No. Is it gonna be as good as using a tripod? But is it gonna work? It works better in wide open areas. It's harder in smaller close areas like this room. So this would be really putting it to the test, but I'm gonna try it. First off, let me talk about this lens really quickly. This is a Mikey something. I think it was like less than $200. It's a micro 4/3 2.0 6.5 millimeter fisheye lens. On a APS-C size sensor, you're gonna see the whole circle. It's gonna be a circle fisheye half dome that you're gonna get. On this camera, you're gonna get a little bit of crop on the top and bottom because it's the micro 4/3 size chip. It's fully manual, which is fine. It's got the f-stop on the lens itself and obviously the focus. In terms of focus, you're gonna wanna keep it at infinity the whole time because you're trying to get everything deep that's out there. It doesn't really matter that it's a manual lens, and in some ways I think it's better because the thing that you're going to rack through and bracket on your camera is the shutter, which is part of your camera, not part of the lens. It's really a great value. I used to use the Sigma 8mm and then like the Canon 8 to 14mm zoom on my Canon cameras, and they're ridiculously expensive and probably did about the same. All right, so there we go. And I'm just going to tack it just a little bit for right now. All right, to get this to work, I really just taped the S out of it for now. I'm sure if I had a little more time, I'd come up with something better, but this should do it for now. I'm close enough to the nodal point that I'm happy. Again, the thing you don't want to do is you don't want to move the camera like this. You just want to move the camera like this. And if you're close enough in this day and age, the programs will do the stitching for you. Not a lot of money to upgrade your camera to do this technique that I'm about to show you guys. Now, the next thing is, let's talk about the settings on the camera for this lens for doing what we're gonna do. It's gonna say change the length. It doesn't know because it's a manual lens, so yes. I've already pre-programmed in 6.5, so we just have to set up our bracketing. So right in camera, right in bracket, we're gonna go and we're gonna turn it on. And I have it set, go to more settings. I have it set to do 7 photos -0 plus. For single shot, I'm gonna switch this to multiple exposures. Just go back there. This is the settings that I recommend. All right, so now that I have put the Plumb Bob on the lens and I have the ability to adjust my f-stop, but I've kept everything at infinity. I've turned on bracketing. What we have to do now is kind of set our exposure through the shutter. So you don't want to like bring the shutter up too high and then have it take the top 3 photos all at 8,000. That defeats the purpose of an HDRI. There's no range to it. I want to shoot at a shutter, median shutter of 1,000. So I'm kind of locked into that. That is the fastest I can go to get the whole range. But if things are too bright, I could take my f-stop ring and I could start lowering my f-stop. I've taken this lens cap and I've put it on the ground just as a marker. This could be a penny or a quarter or anything like that. I'm gonna take this Plumb Bob, I'm gonna line it up over it. And again, I've got this at a nice height so it's comfortable for me to hold it. And then you wanna just make sure that you're able to walk around in a circle. And I usually do 8 steps in a circle around it. And you wanna just try and keep your eye on that Plumb Bob. I know this is kind of weird. You don't really want to look at your screen. You want to look at your Plumb Bob and you want to make sure that you're kind of like centered. And that's what's going to keep the camera centered enough for the program that I use, PT GUI, to auto stitch it together handheld. The other thing we have to do, because this lens is cropped on the top and bottom, is as I take my photos, I'm going to alternate shooting down and shooting up. And I'm going to try to make sure that I get the top and the bottom in every shot. I'm going to slate this first by just holding my hand over it. And what that does is it just gives me like 7 black frames. I kind of know that's the start of my series. It really helps to figure out what's what. All right, so we're gonna do this. I'm gonna start down, get comfortable here. Here we go. And I'm just gonna hold down and do 7. Take a step like this, rotating, go up, kind of high, and do 7. Take a step this way, go down, and do 7. Step this way, up, 7. So I'm rotating up and down. And this is my last one, kind of back where we started. I'm going to tilt all the way down this time since it gets something slightly different. And I'm going to do one more, which I normally wouldn't do, but I'm just going to try it. I'm going to go all the way up. And see. This might not work. All right, and I'm going to tail slate it. I'm going to cover it with my hand. Do that again. And now we have a whole series. See, there's my hand, my beautiful hand. Now we've got this whole series of photos of my room, walking around it in a circle, that should stitch together into some kind of panorama that shows you guys how messy my room is. All right, guys, so I have copied over all the images that I took, and the first thing we're going to do is a little bit of house cleaning. I'm going to use the JPEGs for this, so I'm just going to sort by type, and I want to keep all the JPEGs, and I'm not going to delete the RAWs because you never know, so I'm just going to make a folder called RAW, paste, and let's make a folder called JPEG. Okay, so let's copy all the JPEGs into the JPEG folder. All right, so now we want to look at these as thumbnails, and if we space it out to 7, 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, that's how many we took. This is a Windows thing. It's quite helpful. I'm going to delete all of the slate files now, delete the top ones, and delete the bottom ones. And what you're going to see is that I've very quickly figured out all of my photos. Looks like 10 sets of 7 photos, right? We're going to use a program called PT GUI, and hopefully we're going to have to use this program in a very limited fashion because I don't like doing more work than I have to do. So let's just hit load images. That's the easiest thing to do, and go to desktop and HDRI and JPEG and Control A and open, and it loads them all. Now, because it doesn't know anything about this lens, it's going to ask us, hey, what is this lens? The focal length, we know 6.5 millimeters. We should probably get this right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the size of the image sensor. So I'm just going to go GH5 image sensor size. So 17.3 by 13 millimeters. So 17.3 by, it says 12.975, which is 13, and a crop factor of roughly 2:1, which we know is correct to a 35 millimeter camera. So these settings look right. Lens type, I'm going to uncheck auto and make sure it's on fisheye because we know it's a fisheye, but I'm going to hit OK. Now a couple other things we have to do. I'm going to go into this tab that says crop. go to a brighter image, and you're going to see that this circle is much bigger than we need it to be. So I'm going to shrink this down. We want to try and keep the image, but not really any of the black stuff around the image. We're going to have the top and bottom, but it's going to hopefully intelligently get rid of that. Project Assistant, that should be it. Let's hit Align Images. If this window comes up, you're in good shape. That means you have the right amount of photos, and it says this project appears to contain 10 sets of 7 bracketed photos, which we know is true. If you were off, like if you deleted one and you only had 6 in one set or something like that, you would not get this window, and you'd know that you did something wrong with your file management or your exposures or something like that. We want to go true HDR, and we want to make sure the thing that's checked that says choose this option if the images were taken handheld, because we would like PTGUI to do a little bit more work for us and see if it can find the points and stabilize the handheld. So now we sit here and think, wah, wah, wah. Unfortunately, we got it could not match every single photo error, which I was afraid was going to happen in this tighter room. On a good day, you would not get this, meaning that it just figured everything out and you're done. But let's hit yes and see which images didn't stitch together. So this is where PTGUI gets a little confusing. It's got all this stuff. This huge group worked, but then 49, 62. So 49 and 62 did not match each other. I'm going to not care about any of this, and I'm just going to go over here to Exposure HDRI and hit Tone Map Settings, because this is where you actually get the best preview. Alright, so it looks like we're just having a problem with like one set. I tried those top and bottom photos, and I think those might be confusing PTGUI. So I'm going to get rid of those, and let's try running this thing again. All the settings are right. Let's see. It's a little bit better. It just doesn't like this one set, whatever 49 is. And 48. So I guess we'll go and we'll lob in some manual points. Like I can see that the bottom of the light here would match the bottom of the light here. I can see that the top of my camera little dot here would match the top of my camera little dot here. I can see that the top of my screen here would match the top of my screen here. So now it looks like we're good. So I'm going to go to Project, Optimize. This is good. Yay! This is really good. So when it says this is good, you're in pretty good shape here. So I pretty much fixed that. For whatever reason, it just didn't like this one set. The minute I connected it, everything worked. So again, this is a really small room, you guys. I don't think you'd have any problems in a wider room or in a wider area or an exterior, which usually, right, you're shooting outdoors for HDRIs and stuff like that. This is kind of like, I picked the hardest like location to do this because I'm crazy. All right, this is looking pretty good. It's not perfect. If you look, the monitor seems to be a little bit off in this top corner. Generally speaking, like when I do HDRIs for visual effects, I don't care so much about that stuff. If it's really bad, I just paint it and fix it in Photoshop. But usually you're using this stuff for reflection or lighting, and that stuff doesn't really matter. If you're obsessive over it, you can go back into that control point thing and you can really like start finessing the points and stuff like that. And there's all these PTGUI tutorials on that, but I just don't care. What I did do is I hit Optimize Now here because it kind of makes this curve a little bit better. It just kind of like fixes the light and the highs and the lows and stuff like that, brings in a little bit more range in my HDRI. And there we go. So yeah, so not perfect, really small room. We've got some minor problems here, but I got to tell you, this would work just fine. I've got everything from top to bottom, which is pretty cool. And with the Nodal Ninja, usually you have to paint out the bottom anyway. It's a huge pain in the butt. So I would argue that there's probably just as much paint work with the Nodal Ninja as there is doing this here. I don't really want to spend any more time fixing this because I think it's going to work just fine, and I'll show that, prove that to you in 1 second. I am going to render it out. Just go to create panorama. So I'm good. I can cut out a JPEG and an HDR. I'm just going to hit create panorama. I'm just going to open it in the Photoshop just to show you guys. I can take this little thing here. I can switch it to 32-bit exposure, and we can go up and down. We can see that, look, on my camera that I filmed this, you couldn't see anything out that window. Everything looked pretty much bright, right? But now we've got pretty good range out there, actually. I'm pretty impressed. Like, I can see the sky out there and stuff like that. Just the sun right here, but hey, it's the sun. And again, you know, I got a couple errors. It's not perfect. I'm not going to lie to you guys and say that it handled this small room with perfection. I'm going to open up Cinema 4D. So what we want to do is we want to go to this dome light, and we want to use our HDRI that we just made to light this scene and see what it looks like. So I'm gonna just go right here where it says path on this dome light thing. I'm gonna hit these little 3 dots. I'm going to go, I got a bunch of other HDRIs for this TV show that I'm working on. I'm just gonna go right here to this HDR, hit open. Yeah, so there we go. So now I have just lit this environment with this HDR. You can see the reflection of my windows, which I think is super cool in this environment. So that, my friends, is HDRs. And again, as you can see, like there's an error in the HDR here. And if we were going to use that HDR as our actual background, then we'd probably have to fix it. But what I would usually do is use some other background, because it usually doesn't work very well. And I would uncheck this and just use it for lighting and reflective purposes. And odds are you're going to be okay. All right, so that is it. I feel like it was a relatively successful approach at doing spherical HDRIs using the GH5 with minimal gear. So that is it for this video. Thank you guys very much. So long. See ya. Bye-bye.